Today we're going to talk about standard deviation. So make sure you have out that worksheet that's like our fill in the blank notes. So let's talk about the definitions. Deviation is the distance away from the mean of the data. Now, standard deviation is the average of how far each piece of data is from the mean. Now, this right here is just a fancy formula that you're probably going to see when you go to college. I just want you to make sure you see this, and we're actually going to be using this formula in a little while, but I break it down so that step by step in order to use it. And also we have the variance. The variance is the standard deviation squared. So there's also the formula for that. So let's go to our first example. So it says, find the standard deviation, use the chart to organize your data. So I've got the data listed over here in the data column. And if we follow these steps, we'll be able to find our standard deviation really easily. So the first thing is we need to find the sum of the data. So when we add together our data, 4 plus 6 plus 8 plus 8 plus 7 plus 9 plus 10, put that in your calculator and find out what you get for the sum. You should get 52. Then it says find the mean of the data. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of data. So we need to take 52 and divide it by 7, and we get 7.4 as our mean. Okay. Next thing we got to do is calculate the data minus mean column. So for every piece of data, we're going to subtract from it 7.4. So 4 minus 7.4 gives us negative 3.4. So we're subtracting 7.4 from all of these. So go down the column and subtract 7.4 from all of this data and fill out your data minus mean column. Now it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. So pause the video and finish your data minus mean column. So here's what you should get for your data minus mean column. You should have negative 3.4, negative 1.4, 0.6, 0.6, negative 0.4, 1.6, and 2.6. So we did the data minus mean. We took care of C. Now D says calculate the data minus mean column squared. So we're going to take whatever's in this column, we're going to square it and put it in the next column. So for the first one, if we have negative 3.4 squared, I get 11.56. So pause the video and calculate the data minus mean column squared column. Alright, now don't forget that whenever you square a number, we're going to get a positive out. So in this column, you should have 11.56, 1.96, 0.36, 0.36, 0.16, 2.56, and 6.76. So we calculated this column. Then it says find the sum of the data minus mean squared column. So we're going to add together all of these numbers. So do that now. When you add that column, you should get 23.72. So then it says take the total from E and divide it by the amount of data minus 1. So we've got 7 pieces of data. So we're going to subtract 1 from that, and we're going to divide 23.72 by 6. So 23.72 divided by, we have 7 pieces of data minus 1. So we have 23.72 divided by 6, and you get 3.953 repeating. Then the last thing you got to do is take the square root of this. So if we take the square root of 3.953 repeating, you'll get 1.988. And that's our standard deviation for example 1. Moving on to example 2. So it says follow the same steps, that should be steps instead of steps, from example 1 to find the standard deviation of the data below. So you're going to follow steps A through G on example 1 for example 2. So the data this time is grades on your Unit 6 test. So here's the list of the data, and here's your table. So pause the video and try to find the standard deviation by hand from beginning to end for example 2. Make sure you use letters A through G from example 1 as a guide. Okay, so here's what you should have gotten for your standard deviation. So you got your mean was 79.67. Then you calculated your data minus mean column. So you took all of these and you subtracted 79.67 from it, and you got this column. Then you take the data minus mean column and you square it, and you'll get the next column. Then you need to add together all of the data from the data minus mean squared column, and you get your sum as 1,996.7469. Then you need to divide it by the number of pieces of data minus 1. There's 12 pieces of data, so you take that number and divide it by 11, and you get 181.5. Then take the square root of that, and you get your standard deviation as 13.47. Now, much like what we did for the box and whiskers, you can use your calculator to check this. Now, it's the same exact steps as when you're using the calculator to find box and whiskers. Now, this is what prints out, where it has the X bar, where it's got the X with a little line over it. That is the mean, and SX is the standard deviation. So, not only does it give you this information for box and whiskers, but it also gives you the mean and their standard deviation for the data.